The Atlantic stretched endlessly, a vast gray mirror under the early morning sun. The aircraft carrier, a floating city of steel, cut through the waves with mechanical precision, its deck alive with a dozen moving stories at once. Sailors dashed across the runway, securing gear, checking planes, and shouting over the roar of engines. The smell of jet fuel mixed with salt and sweat, and the metallic clang of machinery punctuated every moment. It was another routine morning on the USS Valor, or at least it should have been. Amid the chaos, a figure appeared near the edge of the deck. She was small, almost fragile-looking, dwarfed by the giant jets surrounding her. Her clothes were casual, a loose jacket, sneakers scuffed from travel, hair whipping wildly in the salt wind. She looked lost, as if she had wandered onto the wrong ship entirely. Sailors glanced at her with suspicion. "Who let her on deck?" muttered Petty Officer Ramos, gripping the railing and squinting against the sun. "She doesn't belong here." Some of the younger crew laughed nervously, assuming she was a civilian on a rare authorized visit. But there was something about the way she held herself, upright, alert, her eyes scanning the deck with uncanny focus, that sent a shiver down their spines. She wasn't wandering. She was assessing, calculating, cataloging everything around her. Lieutenant Harper, an F-22 pilot with 6 years in the air, stepped from the shadows of the hangar deck, squinting at the rising sun. His eyes fell on the stranger and froze. There was something familiar in her posture, in the way she moved between the jets as if she belonged. But no visitor was cleared for this section of the flight deck. None. Harper narrowed his eyes. "Hey, you, what are you doing here?" The woman didn't flinch. She tilted her head slightly, surveying the jets as if weighing each one's potential. Then she bent slightly to adjust a small device in her hands, her movements precise, deliberate. From the corner of his eye, Harper noticed the faint glimmer of a badge peeking from beneath her jacket. He squinted. It wasn't a standard civilian badge. It had the familiar symbols of top-secret clearance, encrypted beyond any normal visitor's credentials. His chest tightened. That's not a visitor pass," he whispered under his breath, almost to himself. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she straightened, brushing hair from her face, and her lips moved in a whisper of code. But the comms picked it up. Her voice was calm, steady, unnervingly precise. "Call sign Phoenix, Deck Bravo confirmed." The words cut through the roar of the engines like a knife. Pilots froze mid-stride, sailors halted in their duties, and even the usually unflappable Captain Reynolds, standing on the bridge, furrowed his brow in disbelief. Harper's heart skipped. Phoenix. He had seen the call sign during covert operations, on encrypted mission logs, and in classified briefings. Phoenix wasn't just a pilot. Phoenix was a ghost, a legend believed lost years ago during an unauthorized mission. And here she was, standing mere meters away on the deck of the Valor, alive and speaking with authority. "What, how?" Harper's voice cracked slightly, disbelief laced with awe. The woman met his gaze. There was no hesitation, no nervousness. Only a calm, almost eerie confidence that made even seasoned pilots uneasy. She didn't need introduction. She didn't need permission. Her presence alone commanded attention. "Jets are cleared for departure," she continued, eyes flicking to the aircraft lined up for takeoff. "No anomalies detected." The carrier seemed to hold its breath. Sailors exchanged nervous glances. None had trained for this. No manual covered a scenario in which a presumed dead Top Gun returned to an active carrier without explanation, issuing orders to pilots and deck crew alike. "Control confirmed deck status. Are all systems nominal?" Harper asked, stepping closer, instinctively ready to intervene. Phoenix didn't flinch. She keyed her device with practiced precision, her hands steady despite the gusting wind and chaos around her. "All decks operational. Launch parameters aligned. No external interference detected. This area is secure." A sudden alarm shattered the fragile calm. The deck shuddered as a warning blared through the ship. Sailors ducked instinctively, hearts racing. Harper's pulse jumped. He knew that sound. It wasn't routine. It was urgent, and it demanded immediate attention. "Phoenix," Harper called almost instinctively. What's happening?" Her eyes flicked to the radar screens mounted on the carrier's superstructure. Her expression didn't change. Calm, collected, untouchable. She tapped coordinates on her handheld device, and a soft hum of control rippled through the carrier's systems. "Incoming radar blips," she said, her voice carrying easily across the roar of engines and wind. "Fast movers, too fast for standard intercepts." Harper's stomach clenched. Fast movers meant jets, or worse, unknown aircraft. Intruders, the kind that tested a carrier's entire defensive perimeter. Before anyone could ask more, Phoenix slipped behind a stack of crates and machinery, disappearing from sight. It was almost imperceptible, like a shadow melting into another shadow. The deck froze. The sailors who had laughed moments ago were silent, their eyes searching the gray morning sky. The F-22's engines thrummed, ready for launch, but now the pilots hesitated. Their attention was not on the jets, but on the woman who had vanished as suddenly as she appeared. Harper's voice cracked again, low, urgent. "Where did she go? Who is she really?" The roar of the engines and the sea masked any reply. All that remained was the wind whipping across the deck and the memory of her words, echoing in Harper's mind. "Call sign Phoenix, Deck Bravo confirmed." And somewhere deep in the Atlantic morning, the ship seemed to shiver in anticipation, as if even the steel hull knew that this day would not be routine, and that the mysterious stranger, Phoenix, had just rewritten the rules of the game. The first blip appeared on radar, and the real storm was about to begin. The hum of the carrier was no longer comforting. It had become a heartbeat, thundering with anticipation. The crew moved with a nervous precision, eyes darting to the radar screens and sky above. The first blip, small, almost insignificant, danced erratically, moving too fast, changing vectors with unnatural precision. Lieutenant Harper's chest tightened. Something was coming, and it wasn't ordinary. From the edge of the deck, Phoenix emerged again, stepping into the light like she had always belonged there. Her hair clung to her face in the morning wind, but she didn't brush it away. Instead, her gaze scanned the deck, the jets, and the radar screens with surgical precision. Every movement was calculated, almost preternatural. "Lieutenant Harper," she said, her voice calm yet commanding. "Deck Bravo, all aircraft cleared for defensive maneuvers. Follow my instructions exactly." Harper froze. You know me?" he asked, disbelief lacing his tone. Phoenix's lips curved slightly, almost imperceptibly. "You've flown with me before, indirectly." A chill ran down Harper's spine. He knew the legends of Phoenix, the top pilot who had vanished 5 years ago during a classified mission over hostile airspace. Everyone assumed she was dead. Now, alive and standing before him, she radiated a quiet intensity that made even hardened sailors feel exposed, like children in a storm. "Control, check incoming craft vectors," Harper barked into the comms. But his words barely mattered. Phoenix had already keyed in coordinates on the portable device she carried, sending encrypted commands to the carrier's automated systems. The F-22s were already responding to her silent orders, engines throttling, wings tilting in precise angles that even the pilots struggled to comprehend. "Two fast movers approaching," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "Unknown signature, ghost protocol engaged." The sailors whispered among themselves, exchanging anxious glances. Ghost protocol wasn't a training exercise. It was reserved for the unthinkable, the impossible, highly classified threats that only existed in simulation. And here it was, live, in real time, executed by a woman who shouldn't even exist. Harper's mind raced. How does she know? Before anyone could answer, the two incoming blips changed trajectory suddenly. One looped in a tight arc, moving in a pattern designed to confuse radar systems. The carrier shuddered as the edge of the first craft's wake whipped across the flight deck, scattering unsecured equipment. Sailors clutched rails, hearts hammering. Phoenix's voice cut through the comms, calm and steady. "Do not engage. Wait, observe, they want you to panic." Her confidence was almost maddening. Every instinct in Harper's body screamed to act, to intercept, to fire. But every calculation in Phoenix's posture, every detail she had noted on the deck and radar told him otherwise. This wasn't a fight yet. It was a test. From the shadows of the carrier, Captain Reynolds emerged, eyes narrowing at the scene. "Who is she?" he demanded, voice taut with authority and disbelief. Harper hesitated, glancing at Phoenix. I don't know, sir, but she's Phoenix." The captain's jaw tightened. "That's impossible. Phoenix is," his voice caught, disbelief etched across his face. "She's classified, presumed lost 5 years ago." Phoenix didn't answer. She simply tapped a sequence into her device, coordinating jets, the carrier's defense systems, and even the radar network with movements so precise that Harper couldn't follow them all in real time. Each blip, each potential threat, was accounted for before it even fully materialized. "Incoming craft closing in fast," Phoenix said, her voice barely above the wind, yet it carried across the deck with absolute clarity. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Maintain formation." Harper swallowed hard. He watched as the F-22s aligned in near-perfect precision, responding to commands that weren't even in their manual. The unknown aircraft moved unpredictably, testing the carrier's defensive perimeter, trying to provoke mistakes. Yet Phoenix's guidance was flawless, every calculation anticipating the intruders' moves before they happened. A loud clang echoed across the deck as one of the jets narrowly avoided a collision with a catapult. Sailors froze, hearts racing. The sheer audacity of Phoenix's control, her calm in the storm, left them breathless. She wasn't just leading, they were following her instincts, and that instinct was otherworldly. Harper looked at her, studying her face, trying to reconcile the legend with the person before him. Eyes sharp, jaw set, hands steady, she was a ghost brought back to life, blending into the chaos as though she had never left. And then, without warning, she moved toward the carrier's catwalk, disappearing behind a stack of equipment. In the same moment, the radar blip split into multiple vectors, accelerating toward the carrier faster than the pilots expected. Harper called out, "Phoenix, where are you going? Don't leave." But she didn't answer. Her voice, calm and unflinching earlier, was gone. Only her orders remained, executed remotely, precise, impossible. The first intruding aircraft sliced through the clouds, a shadow against the morning sky. Its trajectory aimed directly for the carrier's vulnerable bow. The deck vibrated with anticipation, engines and humans alike bracing for impact. Harper's hands shook on the throttle. Every instinct screamed to take control, but he couldn't. Not with Phoenix orchestrating the unseen threads of danger. And in that moment, he realized the terrifying truth. They were not in command anymore. She was. And just as the shadow of the unknown aircraft loomed closer, a second blip appeared, faster, sharper, weaving between clouds in impossible arcs. The carrier's alarm screamed again, the warning lights flashing in chaotic sync with the pounding of hearts. Phoenix's calm voice echoed faintly across the comms. "Brace yourselves. This is only the beginning." Harper's stomach sank. The woman everyone assumed was a lost tourist, wandering onto the flight deck, was no tourist at all. She was a predator in a world of predators, and the real battle was only just beginning. The horizon darkened with the approaching silhouettes. Every soul on deck felt it. The tension, the anticipation, the knowledge that everything they thought they knew about control, authority, and survival was about to be rewritten. And then, just as Harper reached for the radio to call for backup, she vanished completely. No sound, no trace, only the lingering echo of her words and the impossible certainty that she was already 3 steps ahead of them all. The first strike was imminent. The sky over the Atlantic had transformed from pale dawn to a canvas of steel gray. Clouds churned as if the weather itself sensed the approaching chaos. The USS Valor's flight deck, once a theater of routine precision, had become a crucible of panic and awe. Every sailor's eyes were fixed on the radar screens, tracing the movements of the fast-moving, unknown aircraft that had appeared from nowhere. Lieutenant Harper gripped the throttle of his F-22, knuckles white, every muscle taut. He had flown hundreds of sorties, faced hostile forces in distant skies, but nothing in his experience could prepare him for what was unfolding now. The intruders moved with an agility and speed that defied logic, weaving through the radar grid as if the air itself obeyed their command. "Vectors are unpredictable," Harper muttered into his comms, voice tense. "These aren't standard intrusions, they're testing us, and they're faster than anything we've tracked before." From the edge of the deck, Phoenix emerged once more, moving like a shadow through the chaos. Her presence was magnetic, pulling attention and focus from everyone on deck. She carried no weapon, no visible authority, yet the sailors instinctively fell in line with her movements. "Jets, align formation delta," she commanded, voice calm and precise. Every syllable resonated over the roar of engines and wind. "Anticipate vector deviations. Follow my lead exactly." Harper glanced at her, disbelief and awe warring inside him. She wasn't just giving orders. She was predicting the enemy's maneuvers before they happened, threading the jets into positions that seemed impossible to calculate in real time. She's unreal," muttered Ensign Rivera, watching Phoenix's device manipulate the carrier's defense systems remotely. The radar blips danced, erratic, almost playful, as though taunting them, but Phoenix's fingers flew across the screen, neutralizing every unpredictable move with preternatural precision. The first fast mover sliced through the cloud cover like a phantom, its sleek silhouette dark against the pale gray morning. It wasn't a standard fighter jet. Its design was unfamiliar, angular, and deadly efficient. Its speed made Harper's stomach tighten, as if gravity itself had turned traitor. "Brace for evasive," Phoenix's voice cut through the comms, calm as the eye of a storm. "Do not engage unless directly threatened. Observe patterns, they want a reaction." Harper's instincts screamed to fire. Every mission he'd flown drilled into him the same mantra: neutralize threats immediately. But he hesitated. Phoenix's presence wasn't just commanding, it was controlling, bending the situation toward outcomes none of them could yet comprehend. Another shadow appeared on the radar, this one approaching from a diagonal vector, faster, sharper, weaving in ways that seemed impossible. The carrier shuddered slightly as it disturbed the air around the deck. Sailors ducked instinctively, gripping the rails. Even the hardened bridge officers exchanged uneasy glances. Harper keyed his mic, voice strained. "Control, what are these aircraft? Identification." Silence. Radar operators were muttering, but no one could make sense of the readings. The intruders' signals were scrambled, almost invisible, appearing and disappearing at impossible speeds. Phoenix moved closer to the edge of the deck, eyes scanning, hands steady on the device. Her fingers tapped a sequence that sent the F-22s into a near-perfect formation. Wings tilted, engines throttled, and in that instant Harper realized something terrifying. She was no longer just guiding them. She was anticipating the intruders' every maneuver, predicting their paths with uncanny accuracy. "They're not just fast," Harper whispered, heart racing. "They're adaptive, learning, and she knows it." The first fast mover banked violently, slicing through the formation. A jet's wingtip clipped dangerously close to another, and Harper felt the sickening pull of near disaster. But Phoenix's calculations held. The F-22s adjusted mid-flight, correcting impossibly fast, avoiding collisions that should have been catastrophic. From the bridge, Captain Reynolds' face was pale. How is she doing this?" he murmured, voice low. The entire carrier seemed to hold its collective breath. Then, without warning, the unknown craft fired a pulse. A wave of energy rippled through the carrier systems, scrambling radar and communications for a fraction of a second. A collective gasp rose from the deck. It was enough to throw even the most seasoned operators into confusion. But Phoenix didn't flinch. Her fingers moved faster, typing sequences and commands that restored systems before anyone could fully comprehend the damage. The jets adjusted automatically, engines screaming, wings cutting precise arcs through the sky. Harper felt his jaw clench. She wasn't human. She was a force of nature, bending chaos into order. "Deploy countermeasures," Phoenix said softly, almost conversationally. "They're testing our reactions, but we're already 2 steps ahead." Harper's eyes widened. 2 steps ahead. How could anyone be 2 steps ahead of aircraft that were already impossible to track? Another blip appeared, closer this time. The craft streaked toward the carrier, banking sharply, almost like it was toying with them. Sailors screamed as the deck shuddered beneath the shockwave of its passage. Phoenix's eyes flicked to the horizon. Calm, calculating, deadly. "Prepare for evasive pattern Zulu," she ordered. "This is not an attack, it's a distraction. The real threat is coming from above." Harper glanced upward, tension ripping through him. Clouds churned, and for a moment the gray sky seemed infinite. Then a shadow passed, faster than anything they had ever seen. It moved with intent, zero hesitation, slicing through clouds like a knife through silk. Harper's stomach dropped. Good God! From somewhere behind him, a comms officer stammered, "Sir, that's not possible." Phoenix's voice cut through, sharp now, precise, commanding. "All pilots maintain formation. Trust my lead. Do not break ranks. Not now, not ever." The shadow moved closer, faster, impossible, and then, just as quickly, it disappeared, vanishing into the cloud cover as if it had never existed. Harper's heart pounded. He looked for Phoenix, but she was gone again, vanished into the deck shadows. The carrier's crew froze, unsure if she had moved forward above or somehow vanished entirely. And then from the comms her voice whispered, almost inaudible yet chilling in clarity. "Brace yourselves, the storm has only begun." Harper stared at the sky, the horizon, the radar, and the empty deck around him. He realized with a sickening certainty that the woman they thought was a lost tourist, standing briefly on their deck, was orchestrating a battle none of them could yet understand. The next strike was coming. And when it did, the USS Valor would not just face intruders from the sky, it would face a force that seemed unstoppable. The USS Valor rocked gently on the Atlantic swells, but the calm was deceptive. The air above the carrier had become a theater of shadows and impossible speeds. The mysterious aircraft, the intruders, had vanished into clouds, leaving the crew in a tense silence that pressed heavier than the humid morning. Every sailor felt it. A quiet before a storm, but one that whispered of chaos lurking just beyond sight. Lieutenant Harper ran through the mental checklist he'd repeated hundreds of times before. Jets aligned, systems nominal, pilots at their stations. Yet none of it mattered, not really, because nothing about this scenario followed the rules. Nothing made sense, and the shadow that had streaked across the clouds hung in their minds like a warning. "Lieutenant, report." Captain Reynolds' voice barked from the bridge, tense and clipped. Harper's eyes flicked to the deck. All jets in formation. Phoenix is coordinating remotely. She's anticipating the intruder's every move, sir. It's unreal. The captain pinched the bridge of his nose. Who is she? No one answered. The answer wasn't in any manual, any roster, or any memory. Phoenix had vanished again, leaving only the echo of her presence, her authority, and the knowledge that the ship, the crew, and every pilot depended on her instincts. A low hum vibrated through the deck as one of the radar screens picked up a new blip. Unlike the previous fast movers, this one was closer, bigger, more deliberate. It moved with intent, cutting through the horizon toward the carrier in a sharp diagonal, banking unpredictably, yet leaving a trail that suggested control, not chaos. Harper's pulse raced. "That's too precise. way too precise. Someone or something is controlling this. From the shadows, Phoenix emerged, calm and fluid, her eyes scanning the horizon. Every gesture was deliberate, a dance of calculation that kept the pilots and sailors tethered to the impossible order she imposed. "Engage Observation Protocol Echo," she instructed softly, almost under her breath. Her words were not casual. They carried authority that anchored the crew, bending fear into focus. "They are testing, not attacking. Watch patterns, anticipate vectors, adjust formations. Do not react impulsively." Harper swallowed, disbelief mingling with awe. She wasn't just a pilot. She was a strategist, a phantom guiding real human lives through chaos with nothing but instinct, knowledge, and a terrifying calm. A sudden gust ripped across the deck, throwing loose equipment into precarious angles. Sailors grabbed railings, eyes darting nervously between clouds and their instruments. The blip moved again, faster now, slicing through radar readings with impossible arcs. It was learning, adapting, and Phoenix anticipated each adjustment, issuing silent commands to the F-22s that kept them aligned in a formation that seemed mathematically improbable. "Harper," she said finally, her voice low and clear, cutting across the deck like a blade, "you need to trust instinct, not instruments. Instruments can lie. Instinct cannot. Follow me. Follow my lead." Harper's stomach twisted. He knew instinct. He had lived and died by it in countless combat missions, but what she demanded was more. She demanded surrender, not of skill, but of ego. The realization hit him like a wave. In this storm, she was the only anchor. Another blip appeared, closer, sharper, slicing between clouds with terrifying precision. The carrier shuddered. Sailors ducked instinctively, gripping rails and console edges. The deck seemed alive with tension, every crew member aware that they were now pawns in a game orchestrated by a force none of them fully understood. Phoenix's eyes flicked to the approaching shadow. Calm, calculating. She tapped commands into her device, a sequence so rapid that Harper couldn't follow. The jets adjusted midair, banking with precision that seemed impossible, their wings cutting arcs through clouds that would have shredded lesser pilots. Harper realized something horrifying. This wasn't just defense. This was choreography, a deadly ballet designed to predict and counter moves before they even happened, and it was being conducted by a woman who should not exist. From the bridge, Captain Reynolds barked orders, but they were redundant. Phoenix had already overridden systems, coordinated formations, and anticipated the intruders' every maneuver. It was as if the carrier itself was bending to her will. Suddenly, the shadow fired a pulse, a flash of light, a wave of energy that scrambled communications briefly. The carrier shuddered, alarms blaring. Sailors screamed instinctively, hearts pounding. Harper felt his stomach twist. Everything in him told him to react, every muscle tensed for evasive action. But Phoenix remained calm, almost impossibly calm. Her fingers danced across the device, inputting sequences faster than humanly possible, counteracting the pulse before anyone else even realized what had happened. The jets adjusted mid-flight, banking in perfect synchronization. Harper's jaw clenched. She was untouchable. "She's saving us," Harper muttered, barely above a whisper. "She's saving the whole damn ship." Then, without warning, she disappeared again, slipping behind the crates along the catwalk like smoke. For a heartbeat, the deck felt empty, vulnerable. The blips danced faster, cutting unpredictable angles through the sky, but the ghostly presence of Phoenix remained, a quiet, invisible hand guiding the crew through a storm of uncertainty. A new blip appeared, one that made Harper's blood run cold. It was massive, faster than anything they'd tracked before, diving directly toward the carrier from above. Its trajectory suggested not just an attack but an intent to annihilate. Harper's voice shook. "Deck, look, that's impossible." Phoenix's voice came from the comms, calm, deliberate, terrifying in its precision. "Brace yourselves. Do not break formation. Do not panic. This is the main threat, all else is diversion. Harper's eyes widened. Main threat. Diversion. The other fast movers, the ones they had been tracking for the past hour, were nothing but distractions, and the real danger, larger, faster, and far more lethal, was still approaching. Sailors froze. Jets hung in the air like statues of steel. The carrier seemed to hold its breath. Every movement, every pulse, every heartbeat synchronized to the rhythm of Phoenix's commands. Harper swallowed hard, realization dawning like ice down his spine. The woman they had assumed was a lost tourist, wandering aimlessly onto the flight deck, was not lost at all. She was orchestrating every move, predicting every threat, and commanding a battle that no one else could comprehend. The massive blip drew closer, slicing through clouds and lightning-drenched mist, a shadow of impending doom. Its silhouette hinted at speed, intelligence, and a lethality that made even Harper's seasoned combat instincts quake. And then, as the horizon darkened with the approach of the impossible, Phoenix's calm voice cut across the roaring wind and screaming alarms. "Hold steady, the storm begins now." Every eye on the deck locked to the sky, every heartbeat quickened, every instinct screamed fear. And the first strike, the true strike, was about to hit. The USS Valor groaned under the weight of anticipation. Every crew member on deck, in the hangar, and on the bridge felt it, the electric pulse of imminent danger. The unknown aircraft, fast and precise, had positioned themselves strategically around the carrier, testing boundaries, probing weaknesses. Every shadow on the radar seemed alive, taunting, calculating. Lieutenant Harper's hands were tight on the throttle of his F-22. He could feel the tension in the air, the way the wind seemed sharper, heavier. The intruders weren't just aircraft. They were predators, stalking the carrier, learning its every rhythm, every flaw. From the deck, Phoenix appeared again, moving with a quiet authority that demanded attention without a word. Her hair whipped in the wind, her eyes scanning the horizon, her hands dancing across the device that had become an extension of her mind. Every command she issued was precise, calculated, executed without hesitation. "Control, confirm unknown craft vectors," Captain Reynolds barked from the bridge, his voice sharp, edged with disbelief. "Divert or engage." Phoenix's response was almost a whisper, but it carried across the deck like a bolt of lightning. "Engage only if necessary. They are testing us. Every move we make is anticipated. Do not break formation. Do not panic." Harper's pulse hammered. "Testing us," he muttered under his breath. "They're testing us with weapons, with speed, with precision. This isn't a game." The calm in Phoenix's voice made his stomach twist. "Every move we make is anticipated." He repeated the words, almost as a mantra, trying to reconcile the impossible. How could a single person anticipate multiple unknown aircraft moving at speeds beyond conventional limits? How could she calculate, predict, and counteract in real time? Then the radar blipped again. Another intruder, faster and larger than the rest, approached from above, banking with deadly elegance. The carrier shuddered under the force of the winds it generated. Sailors grabbed rails instinctively, hearts hammering, adrenaline surging. "Prepare for evasive pattern Zulu," Phoenix ordered, voice cutting through the storm like steel. "This is the main threat. All else is a distraction. Follow my lead exactly." Harper's throat tightened. The main threat. The other craft, the fast movers they had been chasing on radar, were merely distractions, and the real danger, larger, more lethal, was now descending on the carrier. Jets lifted, following Phoenix's calculated instructions. Engines screamed in response to micro-adjustments she dictated. Pilots executed impossible arcs, banking with precision that defied physics. Harper's jaw clenched as he realized the full extent of her mastery. Phoenix was not just controlling the situation, she was rewriting reality around it. From the bridge, Captain Reynolds barked orders, but they were redundant. Phoenix had already overridden automated systems, coordinated the F-22s, and predicted every intruder maneuver before it happened. Harper's mind raced. How is she doing this? He had flown hundreds of sorties in hostile airspace. He had survived dogfights, enemy missiles, and impossible odds. But this was beyond everything. The woman they thought was a lost tourist had become a force capable of orchestrating a battle that no one else could even comprehend. Suddenly, one of the intruders fired a pulse. The wave of energy rippled through the carrier, scrambling radar, navigation, and communications. Alarms screamed. Sailors screamed. Harper felt the familiar adrenaline spike, the urge to act, to protect. But Phoenix remained calm. Fingers dancing across her device, she countered the pulse before the crew even understood its effect. The jets adjusted mid-flight, wings tilting, engines throttling, all under her unseen control. Harper's jaw dropped. She wasn't just surviving, she was dominating. "She's saving us," he muttered under his breath, voice almost drowned by the wind. "She's saving the whole damn ship." And then she moved again, disappearing behind a stack of crates, her presence felt but unseen. The intruders adjusted, probing further, learning faster. Yet Phoenix's orchestration held them at bay, every movement precise, calculated, impossible to anticipate without her guiding hand. Another radar blip appeared, larger, faster, descending rapidly. Its trajectory was deadly. The carrier shook as if the shadow of impending disaster had already fallen upon it. Phoenix's voice, calm and unwavering, cut through the chaos. "Brace yourselves. Engage only if necessary. The storm begins now." Harper's pulse raced. He glanced at the jets around him, at the crew gripping rails, at the bridge officers frozen in disbelief. They were all caught in a web of precision, anticipation, and skill that none of them could replicate. And then the impossible happened. The shadow's approach accelerated. The carrier shuddered violently as if testing its own defenses against an invisible hammer. Sailors screamed instinctively, hearts pounding. Jets flared engines in response, following Phoenix's orders like dancers in a deadly ballet. Harper felt the weight of responsibility crushing him. Every pilot, every sailor, every system depended on her calculations. One mistake, one misstep, and the ship, the crew, the entire operation could be destroyed in moments. Then a sound, a low, mechanical hum, vibrated through the deck. Harper's stomach sank. The main threat wasn't just fast or intelligent, it was alive or something like it. Its trajectory was perfect, calculating, deliberate, like it had studied the carrier for months. Phoenix's calm voice pierced the tension, soft but commanding. "Trust the lead. Do not break formation. Observe, adapt, survive." Harper's eyes widened. She wasn't just guiding them, she was shaping reality itself, bending a deadly, impossible storm into a strategy none of them could see, anticipate, or counter without her. The intruder descended, shadows coiling around the carrier, clouds whipping violently as the air split under its approach. The crew held their breath, the entire flight deck suspended between fear and awe. And then, just as the massive shadow aligned with the carrier's centerline, Phoenix's voice cut through one last time. "Now execute pattern Omega, follow exactly." Harper's hands clenched the throttle. The jets responded instantly, executing turns, flips, and arcs that defied the laws of physics, their movements choreographed by a mind beyond comprehension. The first strike, the true strike, was about to hit. The USS Valor groaned beneath the pounding rhythm of waves, but the carrier's metal bones seemed frail under the invisible weight of the threat above. The sky had turned an ominous slate gray, clouds churning like storm-racked seas, and the first hints of rain whipped across the deck, stinging faces and hands alike. The crew, seasoned and battle-hardened, moved with a mixture of fear and mechanical precision, aware that the rules had changed. The intruders were not following human patterns, they were a storm given shape. Lieutenant Harper gritted his teeth, eyes locked on the radar screens. Multiple blips approached at impossible speeds, looping, banking, disappearing, and reappearing in seconds. These weren't just aircraft. They were intelligent, adaptive, unpredictable. He could feel the weight of inevitability pressing down. From the edge of the deck, Phoenix emerged, her figure a calm island amidst chaos. Her hair clung to her face, wind snapping at her jacket, but she didn't flinch. Her eyes scanned the horizon and the radar in tandem, calculating angles, velocities, and vectors faster than anyone else could comprehend. Every finger movement across her handheld device sent micro-adjustments to the jets, guiding them with the precision of a master conductor. "Override manual control," she said softly, almost to herself, but her voice carried authority over the roar of the engines and the rising wind. "Trust instincts, not systems. Systems can fail, instincts do not." Harper's stomach twisted. He knew instinct, but what she demanded was more, the complete surrender of ego, the faith in a mind beyond mortal calculation. Pilots exchanged glances, tense, uncertain, but bound by the gravity of her presence. She didn't just inspire trust, she demanded it. The first intruder moved again, darting between clouds, banking with impossible agility, its path erratic yet purposeful. Harper's jaw clenched. "It's learning," he muttered. "It's adapting." Phoenix's voice cut through, calm as ice. "Yes, anticipate the adaptation, adjust, lead, predict, survive." The jets responded instantly, banking and pivoting in synchrony, their engines screaming in obedience to commands Harper couldn't see but could feel. The formation was perfect, a lethal choreography that made the impossible seem routine. From the bridge, Captain Reynolds barked orders, but they were meaningless. Phoenix had already calculated countermeasures, adjusted flight paths, and coordinated the defense across multiple dimensions of the carrier's systems. A sudden pulse from the intruder swept across the deck, a wave of energy that scrambled radar and communications for a heartbeat. Sailors screamed instinctively, gripping rails as their world became a blur of alarms and wind. Harper's heart raced. He wanted to act, to intercept, to fight, but instinct and training collided violently in his mind. Then Phoenix moved. Her fingers danced across the device, issuing micro-adjustments that corrected trajectories before the scrambled signals could even register. The jets shifted mid-flight, banking impossibly close to one another without collision. Harper's jaw dropped. She wasn't just surviving, she was orchestrating life itself. Another blip appeared, faster, sharper, cutting through clouds above the carrier. Its path was calculated, deliberate, almost intelligent. The carrier shuddered under the unseen force of its approach, the vibrations sending shivers down the crew's spines. Phoenix's eyes flicked upward, calm, calculating, deadly. "Prepare for evasive Omega pattern. Focus. Do not break formation." Harper's pulse raced. He followed her commands, trusting instinct, even as every fiber of his being screamed danger. The jets moved as one, guided by an unseen hand, a choreography of precision and danger that made every maneuver feel like defiance against gravity itself. From the bridge, alarms blared again. The intruder had fired another pulse, disrupting comms and navigation systems in a pulse of energy. Sailors shouted, scrambled, and ducked instinctively. Harper felt his stomach twist, the weight of potential disaster pressing down like steel. Phoenix remained calm. Her fingers flew over the device, issuing sequences that restored control and guided the jets back into formation. Every movement was deliberate, pre-calculated, and flawless. Harper's disbelief grew with each second. She was untouchable. She was inhuman. She was orchestrating a battle that no one else could comprehend. And then, without warning, a massive shadow descended from the clouds. Larger, faster, and deadlier than the previous intruders, it sliced through the mist with terrifying intent, aimed directly at the carrier. Sailors screamed instinctively, clinging to railings and consoles, hearts pounding. Jets flared in response, following Phoenix's silent commands. Her voice rang across the comms, sharp, precise. "Main threat, All else is diversion. Observe, anticipate, survive. Trust my lead. Harper's eyes widened. Main threat. The other craft, the fast movers they had been tracking, were decoys. And the real danger, larger, faster, and infinitely more lethal, was now descending upon them. The carrier shuddered as the massive shadow drew closer, slicing through clouds and mist. Sailors on deck held their breath. Jets tilted and banked with Phoenix's guidance, forming a near-perfect defensive lattice around the ship. Harper's stomach dropped. Every pilot, every system, every life depended on her calculations. One misstep and the carrier could be lost. "Brace for impact," Phoenix said softly, almost conversationally. But her calmness was terrifying. It wasn't fear that she radiated. It was absolute control, a mastery over chaos that none could comprehend. The shadow struck, slicing through the upper atmosphere with a roar that seemed impossible. Jets pivoted, engines screaming, narrowly avoiding disaster, all orchestrated by Phoenix's unseen hand. The deck shook violently, alarms screaming, sailors clinging to railings, hearts racing. Harper's hands were taut on the throttle. He realized the terrifying truth. She was not just a guide. She was the eye of the storm, the anchor in chaos, the difference between survival and annihilation. And just as the intruder disappeared into clouds beyond the carrier, Phoenix's voice cut through, calm, almost imperceptible over the roaring wind. "This is only the beginning." Harper's stomach sank. The storm had just begun. The crew stared at the horizon, the clouds, and the empty deck around them, knowing with chilling certainty that the woman they thought was a lost tourist was not lost at all. She was orchestrating, anticipating, surviving, and controlling a battle that none of them could yet comprehend. And somewhere in the clouds above, the next strike was already moving, faster than they could track, sharper than they could predict, and Phoenix was already 3 steps ahead. The tension on deck became unbearable. The ocean, the sky, and the ship itself seemed to hold their breath, waiting. Harper realized with icy clarity that everything they had believed about control, survival, and skill had been shattered. Phoenix had rewritten the rules, and the storm, the real storm, was about to hit. The USS Valor seemed suspended between heaven and sea, a lone steel leviathan in a vast, churning gray expanse. The storm above mirrored the storm in the hearts of the crew, tension crackling like lightning through every nerve. Radar screens blinked erratically with the unpredictable movements of the intruders, faster and more adaptive than anything the pilots had ever faced. Every blip represented a lethal threat, and every second felt stretched into eternity. Lieutenant Harper gripped the controls of his F-22 so tightly his knuckles whitened. His mind raced, trying to track the patterns to anticipate the enemy. But they were ghosts, shadows that twisted, dove, and banked with intelligence that defied logic. He had flown countless high-stakes missions, faced enemies that hunted with skill and cunning, but nothing like this. Nothing that moved faster than thought itself. From the edge of the deck, Phoenix reappeared, calm as ever. Her hair clung to her wind-whipped face, eyes scanning the horizon, hands flying across her device with surgical precision. Every command she issued was executed instantly, her guidance threading the jets into maneuvers that made impossibility look routine. "Pattern Omega now," she said, her voice cutting through the roar of engines and storm. Calm, unwavering, deadly precise. Brace for adaptive countermeasures. Follow exactly. No deviations. Harper's stomach twisted. Omega was a maneuver reserved for the most extreme, high-risk defensive situations. It required absolute trust, coordination, and nerves of steel. Any hesitation, any misstep, and the result would be catastrophic. Yet here she was, orchestrating it flawlessly, invisible but omnipotent. The intruders accelerated, banking sharply to test the limits of the F-22's agility. Each one moved like a living weapon, reacting, learning, anticipating. They weren't just attacking. They were mapping, probing, searching for weaknesses. Phoenix's fingers danced over her device, transmitting micro-adjustments to every jet, every pilot, every system in real time. Harper followed her lead, trusting instinct, ego suspended. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. From the bridge, Captain Reynolds barked orders, but Phoenix's calm, steady voice overrode all doubt. Do not engage unless necessary. Observe patterns. The first strike is diversion. The main threat is above. Harper's pulse thundered. He could feel the storm in his veins, the adrenaline, the fear, the thrill. The intruders weren't just aircraft. They were predators in a sky they had never known, and Phoenix was their only counter, her calculations threading a needle that no human mind should be able to follow. Then it happened. A massive shadow split the clouds, a third, larger craft, faster than anything previously encountered, diving straight toward the carrier. Sailors screamed, clinging to railings as the deck shuddered beneath the force of its approach. The F-22s flared engines in response, pivoting in precise arcs dictated by Phoenix's invisible hand. Prepare for evasive maneuver Delta Prime, Phoenix ordered. Her voice was steady, authoritative, like the calm center of a hurricane. Anticipate trajectory, trust instincts, survive. Harper's heart pounded. Jets twisted, banked, flipped, and spiraled, following sequences so perfect it seemed unreal. The intruder reacted, accelerating, adapting, but Phoenix's guidance was flawless, keeping the carrier out of the immediate line of fire. From the radar room, one of the officers shouted, It's analyzing us. Every move we make, it's adapting in real time." Phoenix didn't flinch. "Then we adapt faster, trust me." Her voice carried over the storm, commanding not just attention but unwavering faith. The massive intruder fired a pulse. The carrier shuddered violently as systems scrambled, alarms blared, and waves crashed against the hull with unnatural fury. Sailors ducked instinctively. Harper felt the heat in his chest, the pressure in his skull, the impossibility of surviving what was about to hit. But Phoenix's fingers flew, issuing sequences faster than thought itself. Jets banked and twisted midair, avoiding trajectories that should have been catastrophic. Harper's jaw clenched. She wasn't just surviving, she was orchestrating an impossible defense, threading life and steel into a pattern that bent reality itself. And then, with a sudden clarity, Harper realized what Phoenix had been doing all along. The decoy intruders, the fast movers, had been distractions, yes, but they were also shaping the battlefield, guiding the main threat into a precise path that Phoenix could control, channel, and ultimately manipulate. Every move, every blip, every threat had been accounted for in a choreography only she could see. "Now," she said quietly, almost imperceptibly, but it cut through Harper's mind like lightning. The jets pivoted, engines screaming, following invisible vectors. The intruder above, larger, deadlier, had committed to its attack, unaware that it was moving into the trap Phoenix had prepared. The carrier shook violently as the storm above pressed closer. Sailors screamed, the deck bucking under the force of wind and impending destruction. Harper's hands flew over the throttle, following her lead, hearts and minds synchronized in a deadly dance. The shadow passed the carrier's bow, missing by meters, and then Phoenix's maneuver snapped into completion. The F-22s converged in a coordinated strike pattern, forcing the intruder to disengage, loop, and retreat. Its trajectory wobbled. It had been funneled into an escape route Phoenix had dictated, unseen, precise, and lethal in consequence. Harper exhaled, trembling. The carrier shuddered but survived. The crew looked around, eyes wide, disbelief and awe mingling with adrenaline. They had survived the impossible. Phoenix emerged from the shadows of the deck again, calm, composed, untouchable. Her eyes scanned the retreating intruder, unreadable yet commanding. She hadn't just defended the carrier. She had controlled the battle, bent the chaos to her will, and orchestrated survival where none seemed possible. From the bridge, Captain Reynolds finally spoke, voice low and hoarse. Who is she?" Harper swallowed, staring at the woman who had vanished into the storm, orchestrating a defense no human should have been able to manage. "She's Phoenix," he said, voice trembling. "Alive, and she's something else entirely." But even as the crew exhaled, the horizon remained tense. The intruders had retreated for now, but the threat was far from gone. They had been tested, controlled, outmaneuvered, yet Harper knew deep in his gut that this was not the end. Phoenix's calm had saved them this time, but the storm above was far from over. And somewhere in the clouds, beyond the edge of sight, the real reckoning was already taking shape. The next move would not wait. The storm above the USS Valor had begun to relent, but the tension aboard the carrier was far from dissipated. Clouds still swirled in turbulent gray waves, the horizon streaked with lightning, and the sea heaved violently beneath the steel giant. Every sailor, every pilot, and every officer remained poised, eyes fixed on the skis where shadows still lurked, silent and watchful. Lieutenant Harper stood at the edge of the flight deck, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. He could feel the echoes of the chaos, the impossible blips, the pulses of energy, the terrifying speed of the intruders. And through it all, one presence had dominated, orchestrated, and saved them: Phoenix. She stepped forward from the deck shadows, her hair plastered to her face, eyes bright and unyielding. The sailors instinctively fell silent, as if sensing that every breath of the woman before them carried authority beyond human measure. Harper's gaze met hers, a mixture of awe, disbelief, and the dawning realization of the truth. "Sir," Harper said finally, voice low and tense, "she's Phoenix, the pilot we thought was lost 5 years ago." Captain Reynolds stiffened, disbelief etched deep into his features. "That's impossible. She was classified, lost, presumed dead." Phoenix's eyes didn't waver. Her calm intensity cut through the tension, anchoring the crew in a reality they barely understood. "I was not lost," she said, voice steady, almost chilling in its certainty. "I was in hiding, observing, learning, preparing." Harper's mind raced. Preparing for what? Phoenix glanced toward the horizon, where the remnants of the intruders' attack still lingered in the clouds. "For this. For threats you cannot yet imagine. The aircraft you saw, those shadows, were testing you, probing defenses, mapping weaknesses. They were sent to prepare the battlefield for what comes next." The words sent a chill through the deck. The storm above had been merely a prelude. What came next could decide survival or annihilation. "Why now?" Captain Reynolds demanded. "Why reveal yourself?" Phoenix's gaze swept the deck, taking in every sailor, every pilot, every terrified heart clinging to the edge of fear and faith. "Because," she said slowly, deliberately, "the time to act is now. The enemy knows the carrier's location. They know our capabilities, but they do not know me." Harper swallowed, heart pounding. "You were coordinating everything. Every move, every defense, it was all you." Phoenix inclined her head slightly, expression unreadable. "Every move that kept this carrier alive." The crew exchanged glances, whispers of awe and disbelief rising above the hum of the deck. A lost legend had returned, not just alive, but transformed into something beyond human comprehension, orchestrating survival against forces no one else could anticipate. Suddenly the radar blipped again, a faint signature far off the coast, moving with deadly precision. The intruders were regrouping. They had not retreated, they had learned, adapted, and now sought to strike again. "Harper," Phoenix said, voice calm but commanding, "take your jet. Lead the first intercept. Follow my guidance. Trust instinct, not instruments." Harper nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. He climbed into his F-22, heart racing. As he taxied toward the catapult, Phoenix's voice came over the comms one last time. "Remember your training, remember your instincts, but above all, trust me. You are not alone." The jets lifted into the turbulent skies, engines screaming, slicing through clouds and lightning. The intruders approached, faster, smarter, deadlier. Harper followed Phoenix's invisible lead, movements precise, arcs impossible, anticipating every twist and turn. From the carrier deck, the sailors watched in awe. Phoenix had transformed the impossible into choreography, jets pivoting, banking, accelerating in perfect sync. The intruders reacted, but Phoenix's guidance was flawless, bending chaos into survival. "Main threat incoming," she said, voice calm, sharp as steel. "This is the final engagement. Execute pattern Omega Prime." Harper's heart pounded. Omega Prime was a maneuver reserved for high-risk, high-stakes scenarios. Survival depended on perfect timing, coordination, and trust. And he trusted Phoenix with every fiber of his being. The intruders converged, a wall of speed and threat. Jets pivoted, weaving through impossible angles, dodging energy pulses, countering attacks, and forcing the enemy into a precise funnel Phoenix had calculated. Every move was anticipated, every action orchestrated. The first strike connected, controlled, deliberate, and precise. The main threat deviated, forced into a trajectory that allowed the carrier to survive, unscathed, while the decoys scattered into retreat. Harper's pulse raced as he executed the final maneuvers, every instinct aligned with Phoenix's invisible guidance. Finally, the skis fell silent. The remaining intruders vanished into the clouds, defeated, outmaneuvered, and outsmarted by a single, unseen force. The USS Valor rocked gently on the ocean swells, battered but intact, the crew still trembling from the intensity of the storm above. Harper landed his jet on the carrier, engines screaming, heart still hammering. As he stepped out, he found Phoenix waiting, calm, composed, untouchable. The crew gathered, their expressions a mixture of reverence, awe, and disbelief. Captain Reynolds finally approached, voice low but edged with respect. I don't know what to say. You've saved this carrier, saved every life aboard." Phoenix inclined her head. "I did what had to be done. This is not the end, but it is a beginning. The world is changing and threats will only grow more dangerous. You will need to be ready." Harper stepped forward, eyes meeting hers. "Phoenix, why reveal yourself now?" Her expression softened just slightly. "Because even legends must walk among those they protect. Because even a ghost must show that she exists when the storm demands it. And because sometimes the world needs to know that survival is not a matter of chance, but of will." The crew stood in silence, absorbing the weight of her words. The legend was alive. The lost pilot was here. She was more than myth. She was a force of nature, a guardian in a storm, a living proof that courage, skill, and instinct could defy the impossible. Phoenix turned toward the horizon, where the clouds still churned, and the sea heaved beneath them. Harper watched her, realizing with quiet awe that the carrier, the crew, and the world had been saved not by technology or numbers, but by a single human mind, sharper, faster, and more resolute than any threat the skis could muster. And as the sun broke through the clouds for the first time that day, glinting off the waves and steel deck, Harper understood the truth. Legends never die. They wait unseen until the world needs them most. Phoenix's call sign echoed through the comms, not just as a name, but as a symbol of unyielding mastery, courage, and survival. Phoenix. The crew knew, without a doubt, that no matter what threats rose from the skis, they had already faced the impossible and survived. And somewhere above the clouds in the endless blue beyond, shadows waited, but this time the world had its answer. The storm had passed for now,